Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel, Snark, Sass, and Sincerity. My name is Summer, and today we're gonna have tea time. So I started my channel, hi Bubby, this is my puppy, Flo. Whenever I talk, she comes because she thinks I'm talking to her or that I need someone to talk to, so she comes around. You're gonna hear both of my dogs' little tiptoe, little paws tapping around the house. I love having them out. They bring me comfort, so I'm not going to put them up to make my video. So if it drives you crazy, I'm really sorry, but I mean, also not sorry. One of the reasons that I started my channel to begin with was because I wanted to talk about chronic illness, and I wanted to talk about undiagnosed illness. So I have been dealing with chronic illness for a long time. I had my first migraine when I was 14, and I've had chronic migraine since then. And then I also have another illness, and I don't know what it is. Nobody has been able to figure out what it is. So I live in this really terrible state of being really ill sometimes, and not having an answer when people say, well, what's wrong with you, or what can help you, or, you know, when will you feel better? The answer is, I don't know, and it can feel really lonely. So I wanted to use this channel to kind of talk about the things that I feel, the things that I think, the things that I experience, and hopefully kind of bring together a community of chronic illness sufferers to feel less alone and to feel like there are other people out there who also struggle with this too. So among a lot of things that we're going to talk about, I'm going to tell my story throughout videos on my channel. I'm definitely going to talk about my lowest points. I'm going to talk about suicide and suicidal ideation. It's really common with chronic illness, and I think most people who suffer with chronic illness, if they had the chance to be really honest, would tell you that they've contemplated suicide. Because there are times when it just feels like if you have no quality of life, what's the point? So I want to talk about that too. But today, on our tea time series, I'm just going to talk about things that I worry about. So I figured, you know, if I'm sitting here worrying about them anyway, I might as well turn on the camera and we can worry together. So the series that I'm going to call this, just me talking about whatever, is going to be called Tea Time. I have my tea here. You can see the smoke rising. It's nice and fresh. The tea that I'm drinking today is from Trader Joe's. It's their organic ginger turmeric herbal tea. I like to have it with just a tiny bit of honey, about a quarter teaspoon of honey, a quarter to a half teaspoon of honey, and I like to put a quarter teaspoon of extra ginger powder in it for a little zing, a little kick. I really like it. It's a little too hot to drink right now, so I'm just gonna let it cool over here for a second. I'm wearing my bat earrings. I love these. I'll link them down below. And so pollinator, and I have a bee on my shirt, pollinator too. It says be kind. Get it? My sister gave that to me. Isn't it cute? I love bugs. You're gonna see a lot of bug jewelry on this channel. If you don't like bug jewelry, then I'm really just warning you that there's going to be things that you don't like. But yeah, I have cicada earrings and bat earrings and bee earrings and ant earrings and dragonfly earrings and all kind of clothes and stuff with animals on them. Yeah, are you wanting to say hi? Okay, I'll put a picture of you on so they can see your pretty face. Okay, go lay down. Go on, go lay down. I'm actually going to let her out potty, so 1 second. Okay. So, like I said, we're going to talk about things that I worry about with chronic illness, things that occur to me pretty regularly. And if you love someone or know someone with chronic illness and you kind of wonder what's on their mind, then maybe this is it. I don't know. Keep in mind that I am only one person. I can only tell you my experience. I am not the speaker for all people who suffer from chronic illness. I'm certainly not, you know, the end-all be-all of information regarding chronic illness. There are a lot of amazing YouTubers, I'll link some down below, who also talk about chronic illness and share their experiences. So just keep that in mind. Just one person's experience, but maybe this will help you have a conversation with somebody that you love who has chronic illness. So Number one. So something that I worry about with being sick regularly, both with migraine and with, my unknown illness, is that I'm worried that my entire identity to other people is going to become the sick person. Um, in high school, I had a really bad case of mono, which also really set off my chronic migraine condition. And as a joke, and it was totally a joke, and I leaned into it because making a joke out of it made me feel a little less insecure. But as a joke, I became known as like the Van Wilder sick kid, from the Van Wilder series. Um, and that kind of helped me cope at the time. But now that I live with chronic illness all the time, it really bothers me to think that that's what people are going to think of. Like when they think of me, instead of thinking as somebody who's snarky and sassy and sincere and funny and tells the truth and, is incredibly loyal and passionate about OT and loves her dogs and loves bug jewelry, they're going to think like, oh yeah, she's the girl who's sick all the time. Um, and it's really hard because being ill and not feeling well is such a huge part of my life. And there's just no denying that. If you know me well, then you know that that's part of my life. And I can't do anything about that. There's always going to be days when I don't feel well. It's always going to be a big part of my life, to my knowledge. And so there's this fine line that I feel like I have to walk between sharing that part of my life and hiding that part of my life in order to prevent it from becoming my whole identity to other people. I'm more than somebody who suffers with chronic illness. I want to be more than somebody who suffers with chronic illness. And so, yeah, that's just something that I think about a lot. How do other people perceive me, and is my illness the only thing that comes to mind when they think of me? Number 2. So this kind of goes hand in hand. A lot of these are going to lead right into the other, but this one is, am I complaining too much? Eek. It's really hard to balance talking about your illness and confiding in someone with feeling like you're complaining. I think that if you are chronically ill, for me, so I struggle with the fact that, like, how do I talk about being chronically ill while not sounding like someone who's just complaining all the time about how they don't feel well? And unfortunately, the way that kind of plays itself out a lot of times is that I just don't talk about it at all. So if I'm not feeling well, I just kind of avoid talking to people. I just disappear for a day. Or when my friends text and say, hey, how are you today? I'll just say like, oh, not a great day, or bad health day, or, just feeling meh, or I'll send a meme or something because I don't want to like be specific about what's happening. I don't want to say like, hey, I'm laying in bed and I feel like I might die. I don't want to say this is the 3rd day in a row that I'm not feeling well and I'm starting to lose hope that I'll ever feel well again, like all these things. And so it's like finding that fine line between complaining and just letting people see that part of your life. Because again, I don't want to tip that line into being that person who's like, oh, I don't feel good and my head hurts and I had a migraine and, I've had diarrhea for 3 days or whatever, so that's really hard. It's really hard, and it ends up pushing you into feeling a little bit lonely because you feel like you shouldn't share how you're feeling, or you shouldn't be complaining, or like questioning, did I overshare? Did it come across as whiny? And so in an effort to avoid it all, I just don't say anything. And then that compounds that loneliness factor that is such a big deal with dealing with chronic illness. Number 3. Number 3 is, are my friends frustrated with me, or am I going to lose my friends? Or am I being a bad friend because I'm flaky? So with chronic illness, there is always going to be a component where you don't know how you're going to be feeling. So I have a really close friend named Katie. She's fantastic. She's an incredible person. And she is just kicking ass in her career. And I'm so proud of her. And she works in nonprofits. So occasionally she has, you know, fundraisers or galas or dinners or whatever to go to. And if her husband's not available to go with her, she'll ask me to go with her. And I love it. I absolutely adore it. And unfortunately, there are times when at the last minute I can't go, or I have to cancel because I have a migraine or I'm not feeling well. And the last thing I want to do is throw up in the back of an Uber on my way to a charity gala. So, and in those moments, I always worry a lot about whether I'm being flaky, whether they think of me as being flaky. Because again, like we talked about before, I don't want to over complain and I don't want to overshare and I don't want my entire identity to be the sick girl. So I worry that in an effort to not be complainy and in an effort to protect my identity from being completely taken over as someone who deals with illness, that I sort of become a flake instead, because like that's the only explanation in my mind that, you know, why I'm canceling and why I'm not going when I said I would go. So I really worry about that. I worry about being a bad friend. I want to be the type of friend who shows up. That's what friends do, right? Family and friends, in my opinion, have not necessarily, like family especially, it's not necessarily about who's born to you or who's blood related to you. It's about who shows up in your life. You know, the people who show up for you, those are your family. The people who show up for you, those are your friends. And I want to be that friend. I want to be that friend who shows up, that friend that you can count on, that friend that's loyal, you know, and accountable. And it's really hard when you have chronic illness and you have to cancel, or you don't know whether you'll be able to physically show up. Like I can make all the promises in the world, and if I literally wake up and I cannot walk, there just isn't any way that I'll be able to do what I said I would do. And that really, really weighs on me, because there's just very little in life that matters more than the relationships that you have with other people. And the anxiety that your chronic illness is going to steal those people from you, out of, you know, frustration is really hard. Tea is really good. Super soothing. I've been in quarantine for so long that I don't talk anymore. So when I get on to do these videos, my voice like tires out so quickly. Okay, number 4. Number 4 is, am I letting people down? This one is really hard. And the first person that comes to mind is my husband, because I'm married, and a huge insecurity that I literally have always had, even though my husband is an incredible person and has loved and supported me through it all. And our relationship is just incredible, in my opinion. I worry that I'm letting him down, and I worry that I'm letting my friends down, and I worry that I'm letting my family down. I am, at my heart of heart, an overachiever. I'm very stubborn, and when people tell me that I can't do something, or I can just tell that they think that I'm not smart enough or I'm not strong enough, it is like, okay, hold my purse, because I'm about to show these mofos how it's done, okay? And that was my identity for a long time. Like, I met my husband when I was really young, and we got married really young. We got married when I was 19 and he was 20. And the woman that he married was that woman, was that stubborn, you know, gung-ho woman who was like, oh, I can do it and I will do it. Like, sit back and watch, honey, because here it comes. And for years I was that person. You know, I literally at 19, like, packed my bags and got on a plane to the UK by myself to go meet him after we had not seen each other for almost a year. Because it was just like, nobody's stopping me. Like, I will do whatever I want to. Like, the world is my oyster. I can do it. I was an expert at faking it till I made it. And it was like, yeah, I'm not worried at all. Like, I just flipped non-existent hair, if you were wondering what that was. Anyway, and all of a sudden, you know, 6 years later, I had my first flare of this unknown illness. So, and my illness occurs in a relapsing remitting cycle, which is a fancy way of saying I go through times when it's really, really bad, and then I go through times where it's not as bad. And my relapses, so the really bad times, tend to last a year or more. So out of nowhere, I literally had to choose between showering or doing laundry because doing both in one day was too much for me to handle. And that first flare was the hardest time of our relationship. My husband and I have talked about it. Like, it was really hard for him. And there were times when he was frustrated because this woman, me, who had been his partner and everything, all of a sudden became not a partner, became something that he had to take care of too. And that's a hard transition, especially when you don't know what's going on. Like, nobody can tell you whether anything is wrong, much less what is wrong. And here I am going to the doctor every day saying, like, something is wrong. I'm telling you something is wrong. Like, just because you don't see anything doesn't mean there isn't anything. Something is wrong. And I did that for months and months and months, essentially a year. And I'll talk more about that on my health journey story. But essentially, from that moment on, there was this deep rooted anxiety that I am letting people down, that people are disappointed, that people are counting on me, that people are expecting me to succeed, and that every day that I don't feel well or every time that I don't complete something in the timeline that I said I would, that I'm letting people down. And this extends to everybody. I mean, I'm a full-time student. I'm coming out of a period of relapse right now. So I had to take a year-long leave of absence from my program, from school, and I go back to school in January. But those last few months of school, when I was getting progressively sicker and sicker, and we do a lot of group projects. If you're thinking about being an OT, please know you're going to do a lot of group projects. And I was always insanely worried, like constantly, like anxiety at a 10, that I was letting my group down. And the only way that I could think to prevent that was to work on days when I felt well, to work ahead. And so literally, like if I had a good day, I was literally doing schoolwork from sun up to sundown, trying to get ahead of whatever my part of the projects were, because I didn't want to let anyone down. And even for projects like literally my group hadn't even met yet and we hadn't assigned anything, I would just assign myself something. And in an effort to not be lazy, I would try to assign myself the biggest part or the hardest part, so that I'm not letting people down. It's just this constant worry that somehow I'm not enough, I'm not going to be enough, that because I can't count on myself, I can't count on what I can provide, and therefore I can't count on my worth in some way. And none of that is true. I have an amazing therapist. It took me a long time to find one. That's another video I will talk about. Finding a good therapist is like the fucking hardest thing ever. But right now I'm in a new therapeutic relationship with a new therapist, and he's really great. And part of a lot of what we talk about is just like that self-worth, being independent of productivity, being independent of my ability to live up to what I perceive other people's expectations are. I'm making this up, right? In my mind, I'm creating these statements that aren't true. I'm saying things like, well, they're disappointed in me, or they expected this, or they expected that. Well, those are not true. Those are just things I made up in my brain. And if you're familiar with psychology, you know that obviously I use a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy to help myself, and my therapist helps me with that too. But anyway, worrying that I'm letting people down is a big part of chronic illness, and an even bigger part of a known illness. Number 5, this one's a fun one, folks. Number 5 is I'm worried that I look crazy. This has a little bit more to do with unknown illness or an undiagnosed illness. I want to be very careful when I say undiagnosed, that you guys understand that what I mean is, like, I'm definitely ill. People who have undiagnosed illness, like, are definitely ill. We just don't have anything on a piece of paper to tell us or anyone else what we're ill with. But yeah, I worry that I will look crazy. I worry that people, because when they ask me what is wrong and I don't have an answer for them, that I look like a hypochondriac, that I look like a lazy person, that I look like someone who is looking for an excuse for why they are tired, or that somehow people think that I feel the same amount of aches and pains and fatigue that everybody else feels. I just seem to have a harder time dealing with it. And that's bullshit. This plays hand in hand with imposter syndrome, which is a huge problem with having a chronic illness, and especially having an undiagnosed illness, and especially having an undiagnosed illness that comes and goes in cycles like mine does. Because when I'm not feeling well, I immediately start to forget how bad I felt when I felt bad and think to myself, well, maybe I was just tired, or, you know, maybe I was depressed. I don't know. Maybe people are right, and if I just got up more and walked more, or, you know, maybe it's just me. Maybe, you know, I need to, I don't know. And you think all these things, and then you have a day where you wake up and you literally cannot get out of the bed. Literally cannot get out of the bed because you cannot walk, or you're too dizzy, or you're too nauseous, or my heart rate skyrockets to 120. And I get short of breath and I literally can't catch my breath. Like, those days happen and you're like, nope, definitely sick. Definitely really, really sick. Like, not pretending, don't need more exercise. It's not a situation where I'm like, maybe I'm just mildly depressed. Like, fuck that. I'm actually sick. But it's hard when sometimes you question yourself not to believe that everybody else is questioning you too. And again, this comes back to like those fake thoughts, right? Those lies that your brain tell you. Well, everybody's thinking this, you know, well, this is how it must look to everyone else, or this is how everyone's feeling, or this is how everyone perceives this. Like, you are not a mind reader, okay? You are not a fortune teller. You can't predict what other people are going to think. Okay, you can try all you want, but does it really matter? Does it make a difference? Also, like, is that fair? I don't want people assuming what I think about them based on who knows what. Like, give me the chance to be myself and tell you what I really think. And that's what you have to afford the people in your lives. It doesn't change the fact that to this day, at least once a week, I worry about whether my friends and my family and acquaintances and people who don't even know me, or people that used to know me and now we're, you know, social media friends, if they wonder whether I'm making it all up or whether it's not as bad as I'm saying, or whether I literally just look like a crazy ass lady who's sitting in her house complaining, you know, about the fact that she doesn't feel well when there's nothing going on. Yeah. And then number 6 is a little bit different. All of the things that we've talked about up to this point are more, you know, like in your mind worries. And this one is a bit more of a practical worry. And that is that because my illness is not diagnosed, I don't have an actual diagnosis other than chronic migraine for what is wrong with me. I worry that in the course of my life, I will go through a phase of relapse into an illness, and I will not be able to use any of the legal protections or public programs in place to help people with disabilities, because you have to have a diagnosis to use those. So I worry that if I need something like FMLA, I won't be able to apply for that because I don't have anything to put on that piece of paper. And I worry that if I can't keep my job and I need to apply for disability for a year until I'm well enough to go back to work, I won't be able to do that because I don't have a diagnosis. And this is the reality for a lot of people. I worry about, how will I care for my family? I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to become a burden to the people that I love because I can't work for a year. And I know that at least the American government, most of them, agree that people should have recourse to public programs and legal protections in case they get ill or they have illnesses like mine. But because I don't have a diagnosis, I don't get to take advantage of that. And it's really scary. I'm very fortunate in the fact that my husband has a steady job. I'm very fortunate in the fact that he gets paid enough to support the both of us. If I don't have a job, we can always buckle down. For the last year, I haven't had a job, and we've been able to survive. I don't have kids. It's just me and my husband and the dogs, and as long as we can take care of them, we'll be happy. But I want to contribute, and I am incredibly passionate about occupational therapy. And after going through everything that I've been through to get this degree, when I graduate and I get my job, I want to work. I want to pay back the support and the kindness to my husband for taking care of me and for, you know, supporting me while I went through school. I want to be able to buy presents for my nieces and nephews and my sister and my dad. And I want to be able to travel to family celebrations because I can afford to do that. And if I'm sick and we're on a single income, those are all things that I won't be able to do. And while that seems petty, because there are people who worry about this problem because they literally can't feed their family, they're a single mom or a single parent, a single father, or, you know, they are in a couple, but one person, they need dual income in order to support their family, and it's really hard. These are also things I worry about, and I can only tell you my experience, and I just preface that by saying I realize that I am incredibly privileged for a lot of reasons. But what happens to a lot of people who end up in this situation is they go to the doctor, and the doctor, in an effort to be compassionate, will give you a diagnosis. And the two most common diagnoses that they hand out when they don't know what to give you are fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome, which is also known as myalgic encephalomyelitis, I think. And so then you get a false diagnosis. And while that can help things temporarily, it really complicates things, because as soon as you have a fibromyalgia diagnosis or a chronic fatigue or ME diagnosis, and it's on your chart, as soon as you go see doctors after that and you try to say something like, yeah, but I don't really have that, I just needed a diagnosis so that I could get FMLA, they immediately judge you. Not all of them, but most of them immediately judge you as someone who doesn't accept their diagnosis or someone who has just chronic complaining problems. And it's really hard. That happened to me. Again, I will talk about that on my journey, but I do have a fibromyalgia diagnosis in my chart, and it's not true. It's not an accurate diagnosis for me and my symptoms. But I had to have it because I got into a position when my husband and I were stationed overseas that there wasn't enough medical care available for me, and my symptoms were getting scarier and scarier, and the doctors didn't know what to do. And so that was our only solution. And while I'm eternally grateful to everyone who played a part in getting me where we are now, literally flying us to San Antonio so that I could see doctors to help me, it also has created a domino effect that I've been spending literally years, 6 years, trying to counteract. So I constantly worry about what I'm going to do if I'm sick and I can't work and I don't have legal protections and I don't have recourse to public funds. And that leads me to worry about whether I will again sign on the dotted line to accept a diagnosis on paper that's not true in order to get access to those things. It's hard and it's scary, and yeah. Well, I'm going to stop it there. I don't want this video to be eternally long. This tea is fantastic. Please keep in mind that tea time, let me just tell you right now, may not always be tea. It may sometimes be wine. It may sometimes be beer. It may sometimes be coffee. It may sometimes be a mixed drink. I don't know. It will be whatever it is, but I'm going to continue to call this tea time. Again, thank you so much for just coming to my channel. We're going to talk a lot more about things like this, and I hope that it makes you feel a little bit less alone. You're not alone. There are millions of people who struggle with chronic illness and millions of people who struggle with an undiagnosed illness. You're not crazy. There are lots of us just trying to make it through. So I hope that these videos bring you a little bit of comfort. Hopefully they will be a nice break from funny makeup tutorials or stuff. This channel is really going to be a little bit all over the place because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want on my channel. So there. I will link everything down below that I can think to link, earrings and glasses and headband and stuff like that. Again, please subscribe if you are thinking about it. If you've watched a couple videos, in case you don't know, subscribing to YouTube channels is free, but it really helps me out. And I look forward to seeing all of you snarky sisters next time. In the meantime, try to stay sane and not murder anyone.